Hi, again, it's Rod Fleming here in the Philippines. I'm sorry. I promised you not to do this, but I am doing this anyway. We're going to discuss a little bit more about the science of transgender, and it will be the last one for a while. But this is an important one. It follows on from the other two that I've just done, so I really have to do it. Meantime, please remember, we need your money. So please send us a donation. You've got the addresses there. Please don't hesitate. We'll appreciate it. Now, here I want to discuss a completely bogus notion that has been promulgated lately. Kind of sneaked up, without being noticed. And that is the idea of childhood cross-sex identification. I want you to understand that this does not exist. This is a complete fabrication. Now, I will read from the DSM, that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, edition 5, and its criteria for childhood gender dysphoria, and it says the following. Now, the first one, which is required for the diagnosis, is a strong desire to be of the other gender, or an insistence that one is of the other gender, or some alternative gender different from what one is. That's the core. 2. And note, in that core, sex is not mentioned once. It's about gender. 2. In boys, a strong preference for cross-dressing or simulating female attire, or in girls, a strong preference for wearing only typical masculine clothing and a strong resistance to the wearing of typical feminine clothing. Okay? Again, sex is not mentioned. 3. A strong preference for cross-gender roles in make-believe play or fantasy play. And once again, no mention of sex. 4. A strong preference for the toys, games or activities stereotypically used or engaged in by the other gender. And guess what? 5. A strong preference for playmates of the other gender. And once again. 6. In boys, a strong rejection of typically masculine toys, games and activities, and a strong avoidance of rough and tumble play. Or in girls, a strong rejection of typically feminine toys, games and activities. And then numbers 7 and 8, right at the end of the list, a strong dislike of one's sexual anatomy and a strong desire for the physical sex characteristics that matches one's target gender. Now, 6 of these are required for a diagnosis. There are 8. The last 2 do not actually have to be in the pot for it to be a diagnosis of childhood gender dysphoria. They're add-ons. They're put on at the end. There's no such thing as childhood sexual identity. It doesn't exist. And that is because children don't understand sex. They don't actually know what sex is. I mean, yeah, a boy will know that he has a willy, but it's just the thing he pees out of. And maybe at night he plays with it because it feels nice. It's exactly the same for a girl. It's the thing she pees out of. And maybe at night, half asleep, she plays with it and it feels good. These are not eroticized. They don't understand the concept of sex. What they understand is the concept of gender. When they say, when a boy says, I want to be a girl, what he thinks is that girls are defined by the clothes they wear, the way they wear their hair, the kind of toys they play with, the kind of games they play, that sort of thing, the kind of friends they have. All of these are gender characteristics. So what we are calling here is cross-gender identification, not cross-sex identification. The whole childhood cross-sex identification thing is a canard. It doesn't exist. Now, if you go forward only a few years, but in childhood a few years is a lifetime, into the teenage range 13, 14, 15, yeah, it definitely does become eroticized then, and they are definitely thinking about sex at that point. Oh yes, they are. And they do understand what sex means. They do understand what they're doing. But in childhood, they don't. And so this idea of childhood sexual identity, or identification they call it, it's a nonsense. And this is bad. This is dangerous because this is being used by the same people whom I discussed in the last video, who I'm talking about particular things that they didn't think that the people that they didn't like didn't have these characteristics. So what they've done is they've invented a completely new, non-existent set of parameters, a state of being, so that they can fit themselves into it. They can say, Well, when I was 4, I thought I was a girl. Well, that's fair enough. You didn't think you were a girl in sexual terms. You thought you were a girl in gender terms. That's fair enough. Nobody's arguing with that. All homosexual males, more or less, think the same way. Only some of them end up being transsexuals. Some of them end up being homosexuals. And under the age of 13, there is absolutely no way to know which is which. It's impossible. You go look in the science. You look at the papers. You cannot know at the age of 4 or 5 or 6 whether your sex non-conforming child is, and he's not gender non-conforming, by the way, because gender's fine. It's just that he doesn't match what you expect for his sex. Your sex non-conforming child will be either. You don't know at the age of 5 or 6. You can't tell, and nobody can tell you. So it's really a question of hands off. Just stand back. Don't do anything for the meantime. Until we find out where on earth this is going to go. Some will naturally become transsexual. Some will be homosexual. But there's no advantage in either. It is not better to be a so-called homosexual man, which is an oxymoron anyway, than a trans woman. It's just ridiculous, that suggestion. It's pure misogyny. What's wrong with being a woman? Why shouldn't you be a woman? Is there something wrong with being a woman? And don't give me that bullshit about a lifetime of hormones and surgery, because I'll tell you 2 simple facts. First of all, we all need hormones all of our lives, otherwise we die. Just remember that one. And 2, globally speaking, 90% or more of all transsexuals are intact. They don't have bottom surgery. They don't want it. It's only in the insane Anglosphere, the West, where this actually happens to any great extent. Yeah, I know Thais are absolutely brilliant at GRS, but most of their customers aren't Thai. It's simple as that. Sorry guys, this is a bollocks. People have been hopping around from foot to foot talking about cross-sex ID, cross-sex identification in childhood, and it is a thing that doesn't exist. It's not recognised in the DSM. It's not recognised anywhere else. Why does it not recognised? It's not recognised because it doesn't fucking well exist. It's not a thing. Children don't identify. How do you identify with a sex anyway? Somebody please tell me this. I mean, I'm a great big walking penis, and I would rather be a great big walking vagina. Do me a bloody favour. What they do is they identify with the opposite gender, right? Not sex, it's gender. It's cross-gender identification. These people are so stupid that they can't even understand the difference between sex and gender, even though they are transsexual themselves. That is how fucking dumb they are. That is how dense we're talking about. People with no wit, no brain, except sufficient brain to harm other people for not being quite like the way we would rather you were. If you don't actually do everything that we say, then we will, you know what we'll do? We'll send you to Coventry. And actually, one of the people talking about actually lives quite near Coventry. As a matter of fact. We'll send you to Coventry, and you won't be able to speak to us. We'll shun you. We'll exclude you. And you know what else we'll do? We'll cancel you if you don't agree. And we'll call you this terrible, homosexual man, when you're obviously a trans woman, you idiots. Just because we don't like what you say and how you behave. These people have to be shut down. They have to be stopped. These people have got platforms. People need to stand up and say, no, this is not what it's all about. This is not what it's like. Now, for any parent, for a child who has cross-gender identification, for the first thing is, it's actually quite rare. It's rarer in females than it is in males, but it's rare in both. So most of you just don't worry about it. If your kid wants to put on a dress one day, let him bloody well put on a dress. It's just dressing up. Doesn't mean anything. Tomorrow, he'll be Robin Hood, or whoever. When things go on for a longer period of time, then we have to start thinking about it. But the thing to do not start with this brainwashing at the age of 6. I'm going to take your dollies away. I'm going to make sure that you turn out to be a boy. I'm not letting you have a dress. I'm not letting you have girly books. I'm not letting you watch girly TV. I'm going to force you to be a boy, and you'll suffer for it if you don't. Do not do it. Leave them alone. It's not going to help at all, because they are either going to be, if they're persistent, they're either going to be homosexual or transsexual. And why would homosexual be better? You're being lied to. You're being conned. There's no such thing as a homosexual man. It's a bloody oxymoron. You can't be a man and be homosexual. The whole point of the term is to define men who are not masculine. And you need to be masculine to be a man. It's that simple. So I'm telling you right now, these people are causing an awful lot of trouble. They're causing trouble for young individuals, children. They're causing trouble for adolescents. They're causing trouble for their parents, and they need to back off big time. And they're causing trouble for grown-up transsexuals because they're taking half of them and saying, oh no, you're no longer, you can't be in our club. You're not exactly the kind of TS that we want in our wee club, so we're going to tell you to go and ruffle yourself. This is not acceptable behaviour. Sorry, it just isn't. And nobody else, I don't care if you're straight, fucking gay, lying, fucking triangular, whatever, Martian, I don't care. You must see how immoral it is for these people to behave the way they are. You must see that this is just wrong. There's no special category. You're not special for any reason at all. You just are what you are. We're all human. And the fact is, all trans women are male. And that is that. You cannot get round that. You cannot get round that with all sorts of airy-fairy BS. Doesn't matter if they end up as being, in quote marks, homosexual men, a condition that doesn't actually exist, because they're still women. They're still not men. They can't be men. They can't be a man, unless you're masculine. And you'll say, oh my God, how old-fashioned. Well, I'll tell you something. 96% of the planet's people think that. What makes a bunch of bloody Yanks so special that they can dictate to the rest of the planet how they should think? Yeah, well, I think we've had enough of it. I think it's time we pushed back and said, no, I don't think so. We're not having that. Rant over. Thank you so much.
Ah!